So we're going to learn, look at the Siches, Parshas Pinchas, Chelik Yud Ches, the fourth Siche. This Siche is, I wouldn't say the word hard Siche, but it's basically a Kabbalah Siche, more a Kabbalah Siche. We find in the Siches all kinds of inyanim. We find Nigla, we find Chassidus, we find Drush, we find Pshat, all kinds of things, and we find inyanim in Kabbalah. So this is more a Siche that explains the inyan the way it's a Kabbalah. Not only that, even when the Rebbe says here that the Tzemach Tzedek explains it the way it's Al Pi Nigla, means the Chassidus, the way Chassidus explains the Nigla. In other words, you have the way the inyan is Chatchila Al Pi Pnimius, then you have the way the inyan is Al Pi Nigla, and Al Pi Nigla, Tzemach Tzedek explains the Chassidus here the way it's Al Pi Nigla. So a lot of things. You have to, get to know the Yonim of the Kabbalah, but we'll just learn the way the Rebbe says it. And whatever class we'll get. In Zayar, the Heintige said, Rebbe had gebracht, in Zayar, on this week's Parshas Pinchas, he brings the Maimer Chazal. Actually, it's a Gemara in Broches, but here the Zayar says it in Aramaic, but the same words. Kol man doma Tilo David b'chol yom plazimen. Anybody who says Tilo David, the capital Tilim of Tilo David every day 3 times, Iyo bar Almadosi, he is a person that will get Elam Haba. And we refer to it as Ashrei, the capital of Ashrei. The capital of Ashrei, in Tilim doesn't start with the words Ashrei, it starts with Tilo David, and it goes on. And there's a pasuk before that in the capital before, and then there's another pasuk someplace else that the Chazal put together. But Lapel, this is called the capital Tilo David. So we can say the capital Hillel David, which means we say Ashrei 3 times a day. We say it twice by Shachris, we say it once in Sukkot de Zimra, and once we say it before Avodat Tzion, and then we say it before Mincha. We say 3 times. It's all based on this Gemara. It says that if you say Hillel David 3 times a day, you will have Elam Haba. The Zayah says exactly the same thing, but just in Aramaic. That whoever called the man the Omar Hillel David b'chol yom plazim, and anybody who says Hillel David every day 3 times, Iu bar Almados, he is a ben Elam Haba. And the Zayar later explains, as Trei Zimna is memechuyev to zog until David. Begin at twice of the 3 times you have to say Tilo David. It's a din you have to, and the reason is begin b'zeinu parnosa b'kol yom, because this, by saying this brings you food, sustenance. It brings you parnosa every day. So you have to say it. You have to do in order to get the parnosa. You have to say it. So 2 of the 3 times you have to say, and the dritter modem 3rd time is la begin chayva. That's not a chayva. That's not an obligation. You don't have to say it. So leave a kosher anal in order to ask the Eibishter to give you panos, etc., etc. Ela begin shvoche. That's not the same chayva. It's a way you praise the Eibishter, but that's not a real chayva. The Zayar says. Is mavayir the tata is ein horas of Zayar. So the Rebbe says my father explains it in his horas on Zayar. Ad the amira from Hillel David plazimnin is k'meyagimut tfilos. This that we say Tilo David 3 times a day is similar to the 3 tefillas. Actually, Rashi in Gemara says it. He says clearly, Sholish Pomim Keneged Sholish tefillas. Why do we say it 3 times? Keneged the 3 tefillas. So the Rebbe's father says the same thing, that the 3 times Tilo David is like the 3 tefillas. Und geschehen wie die 2 tefillas Shachas Mincha seine Cheva und tefillas Arves Rishus. Just like the 3 tefillas, we know that the 2 tefillah, Shachas and Mincha, is a chayva. The Chachamim made us an obligation. We have to daven this. But tefillah sarvis, when the Chachamim lechatchila established Ma'ariv, it was only a reshus. Reshus means it's a good idea to do it, but you don't have to do it. You're able to do it, and it's good to do it, but you don't have to. So the Rebbe's father says that since the 3 times Tilo David is similar to the tefillahs, therefore is Azayech ben Ger, it's Amir Tilo David. So just like by the tefillahs, 2 is an obligation and 1 is not. The same thing with Hillel David. That's what the Zayar means. 2 of the times you must say. When Amo begins Shvacha. And 1 you don't really have to say. It's just a way you praise the Eibishter. But Dosi is, the Rebbe's father says, this is like Kamei Valderach Tfiras Alvis Shus. The 3rd time is like similar to the fact that Ma'ariv is only a reshus, not a chayv, not an obligation. So the 3rd time Hillel David is like the 3rd tefillah. It's also not an obligation. This is the way the Rebbe's father says. Let's Tzemach Tzedek in seine Rishimis of Tilim. Let's Tzemach Tzedek in his Rishimis on Tilim, which is Sefer Yehaleir, which is Pirish on Tilim. Bring them Pirish Rasha now. He brings what Rasha says as the Gimel Pom Tilo David and Keneged Sholish Tfilas, that the 3 times Tilo David is Keneged parallel to the 3 times we daven every day. Unfrekt. And he asks Akash on that. Ob ihr sagt, man darf sagen, Tillel David, Tfilas Arbis. If the three Tillel David, 3 times Tillel David, is connected to 3 times Daven, so we should have said Tillel David, my Ma'ariv. We say 1 by Shachris, 1 by Mincha, and 1 by Ma'ariv, like the 3 Tfilas. But was sagen wir, the Gimel Pam Tillel David, 2 Mal in Shachris and 1 Mal in Mincha. So why do we say Tillel David twice in Shachris and 1 in Mincha? If it's connected to 3 Tfilas, so we should say once a Shachris, once a Mincha, once a Ma'ariv. On the end, when he brings it, other people answer, as Tfilas Arbis is not Gizman of Amiras Ashrei. The time of Ma'ariv is not a time for say Ashrei. And he says in order 7, look at different Ma'ariv, it's not a time to say it. By Ein Zman Tfilah or Tila but Laila. Laila is the night is not really the Zman of Tfilah. The male, it's not the Zman of praise. So to say the Ashrei, which is Tila Ladovit, the 3rd time by Ma'ariv, that's not the time. By night, we don't do that. Other, while a name Kedusha Barbis, Pasha Shaykh Kedusha. We don't say Kedusha by Ma'ariv. We see that. We say Kedusha by Shachris, we say Kedusha by Mincha, but we don't say Kedusha by Ma'ariv. And Ashrei is Shaykhs to Kedusha. Whatever the way they explain here, no, Loshnoi earlier. Rabbi brings different Marmakemis of the Shaykhs. And therefore, Zogim Etivul David at Sveitamol in Shachris and Shtot my Arabi. That's why when we say the 3rd time, the 2nd time, which really is the 3rd, we say in the Shachris. We say once a Shachris, the 2nd time in Mincha, and the 3rd time, which it would seem to say the Ma'ariv, we also say it in Shachris instead of Ma'ariv, because Ma'ariv at night is not the time for it. Or the 2 ways, or night is not as man of Tfilah or Tfilah, or Shaykhs to Kedusha is not the man of Kedusha, but that's why we don't say it. So instead of that, we say it an extra time in Shachris. That Tzemach Tzedek will have been in them teretz. Tzemach Tzedek doesn't want to accept this teretz. Leib, the ganze Takana from them, Tillel David, which filled Tfilas Arbis, if it's like Rasha says, that the whole reason why we say Tillel David 3 times, a 3rd time, is because the 3rd time is because of Ma'ariv. Hotit kanort zu sagen, dass in another tefillah in Shachris. So why would we say it in another tefillah in Shachris? If it's made for Ma'ariv, we say the Ma'ariv. No matter how we'll explain that at night is not as man for it. But what does it got to do with Shachris? It's made because of Ma'ariv, so say the Ma'ariv. When you mean Shaykh Ashrei Barbish, lo yemer like baseball. And Elamai, you have a reason that it's not Shaykhs to night, to Ma'ariv. So don't say it. How do we put it into the Shachris? What does it got to do with Shachris? Or you say the Ma'ariv, and if it's not Shaykhs to say Ma'ariv, don't say it at all. Say it only twice. Learn the Rebbe that Tzemach Tzedek, so the Tzemach Tzedek therefore learns that the Maimar Hashas Kol Ha'im Tillel David Gimel Pamim. That this is the Gemara says that whoever says Tillel David 3 times, and Ben Elam Haba is no like Mandom at Tfilas Arbis Cheva. It only fits to the one that holds that saying Ma'ariv, davening Ma'ariv is also an obligation, because in the Gemara it's a Machlokes. Not everyone agrees that Tfilas Arbis is true. That's how we pass him. But not everyone agrees. So there is a Mandom, there is an opinion that Ma'ariv is also a Cheva. So this Gemara, where it says that you have to say Tillel David 3 times, goes according to the opinion, it's connected the 3 tefillas, and it goes according to the opinion that Ma'ariv is also a Chayv, and that's why you have to say it. According to the Gemara, that says that you say it 3 times, and that's connected the 3 tefillas, you can say the 3rd time by Ma'ariv. But we pass that the halacha is that Ma'ariv is not an obligation. So we don't say by Ma'ariv. Why? Because he says the only one that says that you have to say a 3rd time is only if you hold that Ma'ariv is a chayva. But if you hold Ma'ariv is not a chayva, you don't have to say it 3 times. If he's a kumtui, so it comes out as like mandom at tefillas harvest reshus as halacha k'meisi. According to the opinion that Ma'ariv is a reshus, not an obligation, is genug amiras Tillel David Sveimol and chalametz. 2 times is enough. So when a ben elam haba, it means you could say it 25 times. You can say what you want. But when the Gemara says in order to be a ben elam haba, you have to say 3 times. That's according to the one that holds that all 3 davenings is a chayva. So all 3 Tillel David is the obligation. But if you hold that Ma'ariv is not a chayva, so you don't have to daven, so you don't have to say the 3rd time in order to be a ben elam haba. That the Gemara, that's what the Gemara talks about. Und wie is noch masber al derech Chassidus, and the Tzemach Tzedek explains this al Chassidus. Ados was amiras Tillel David tutu b'tfilah shachris and mincha. This that Tillel David, by saying Tillel David in the shachris and mincha accomplishes, wird aufgetan b'tfilas Ma'ariv arbis laman the omar tfilas arbis shuz me'elov. So according to the one that holds that you have to daven Ma'ariv also, that the Maidav is, you don't have to daven, only Shachas Mincha, Maidav is the shoes, so you don't have to take a say, Tillul David. And he says the reason is because whatever Tillul David is supposed to accomplish will happen by itself without you saying it. Similar to Apichsidis, if you don't daven Maidav, if you hold Tefillah Tzarech Yeshus, it's enough to daven twice a day, and whatever you have to accomplish with the Tefillah Maidav will happen by itself. The Peilat says the Yidden accepted it as a chayva or something, but Be'etzim, if you hold it, was never established as a chayva to daven Maidav. Taka, the 2 tefillas is enough, and whatever it's supposed to accomplish, the third time will be accomplished by itself. The same thing Tillul David. If you hold Tefillah Sarvis at the shoes, Tillul David, the third time is at a shoes, so you Taka don't have to say it, and it fits to Apichsidus also that the hamshochas that ever happens to Tillul David is enough twice, and the third time that it has to accomplish will accomplish by itself without you saying it. And this that we do say Lapel 3 times, 2 times is Shachris, is a snitzoverna ben elabo. That's not for the same thing that the Gemara says. The Gemara is talking about becoming a ben elamabo. To become a ben elamabo, you don't have to say it 3 times. Say it twice is enough. The fact that we say it 3 times for a different reason. Not to skip 3 times of saying it. Because the comment that the Rebbe says, I'll explain later, that there's an inyan not to miss one out, not because of what the Gemara wants to say. As far as what the Gemara wants, if you become an Elam Mabo, a Ben Elam Mabo through 3 times, you don't have to say 3 times. If you hold the third time of davening is not a chayva, so the third time is not a chayva either of Tillul David, you'll be a Ben Elam Mabo twice, and the third time will happen by itself. It's also the Gemara. It's Kedai. We do say third time because the third time there's an inyan to say it for other reasons. Because you shouldn't skip a third time. There should be a third time, as the Rebbe will explain later. That's what Tzemach Tzedek says. Now the question that Rebbe has, not from Verstehen, you have to understand, wie stimmt der Bier von Taten? How does what my father, the Rebbe says, explained, how does it fit? When he says that the dritte Mal sagen Tillul David Kmei Val Derech Tfilas Arvis Shus, the Rebbe's father says that the third time is similar to the third time davening, and we say Tfilas Arvis Shus. And that's why the third time the Zohar says of Tillul David is not a chayv. Was leidem kum tu is as eich alibe de mandom and Tfilas Harvest the shoes darf sagen Tillul David 3 more. According to Rebbe's father, he says you say 3 times like you daven 3 times. The third time, and that's the pshat in the Gemara. He says it on the Zohar, which is the exact same thing in the Gemara, where the Zohar says the Gemara says that in order to be a ben elam abo, you have to say it 3 times, and he says that fits to the mandom at Tfilas Harvest the shoes. So it comes out according to the Rebbe's father that even if you hold Tfilas Harvest the shoes, you also have to say it 3 times. So when about Amodos, they become a ben elam abo. She's Norva, the dritte Mol is begin Shvach al derech Tfilas Harvest the shoes. The third time fits to Maidiv, but it's only for the praise of Hashem. It's not a chayva, like Maidiv is not a chayva. But he does say that the third time is parallel to Maidiv. So the third time you say it fits to Maidiv. It's the same thing like Maidiv. How does that fit mit dem Bier von Tzemach Tzedek? As a man da mit Tfilas Harvest the shoes is genug zu sagen 2 Mal Tillul David will zu werden ben elam abo. The Tzemach Tzedek said that that says the Gemara and the Zohar, that doesn't say about the Zohar, it does mention, but I'm saying, but he says like about the Gemara says, which seemingly is the same thing as the Zohar, that the reason you have to say 3 times is because this goes according to the Mandoma that the Maidiv is also a chayva, also an obligation. But if you hold Tfilas Harvest is at the shoes, Sitaka don't have to say a 3rd time. And the Rebbe's father says not like that. That the Zohar says that you have to say it 3 times to be a ben elam abo is according to the Mandam, Tfilas Harvest the shoes. And that's why the Zohar says the 3rd time is not a chayva. But it is parallel to Maidiv. According to the Tzemach the 3rd time is not parallel to Maidiv if Maidiv is not a chayva as a shoes. How does it fit? We also have to understand. Leighton Bier from Tzemach Tzedek. According to the Tzemach Tzedek's Bier, as la Adei Belchis Kri Aloch, as Tfilas Harvest shoes is genug 2 Mal sagen Tillul David zu werden ben elam abo. According to Tzemach Tzedek, that because we pass in Tfilas Harvest is reshus, not a chayva. It's not enough to say twice Tillul David. In order to become an elam abo, you don't need 3. The 3 times is only according to the Mandomer that Maidiv is also a chayva. But if you hold Maidiv as a reshus, you don't have to say 3 times. 2 times is enough. So why do we say 3 times? 2 Mal in Shachas, twice in Shachas. Why do we do that? If Allah we pass in Tfilas Harvest the shoes, and according to that Mandoma, you don't need the 3rd time. So why do we say 3 times? And also that Tzemach Tzedek schreibt der dem Tam, that Tzemach Tzedek, we said before, brings the reason. We shouldn't skip saying Ashtay, which is still a David 3 times. He says that's the reason. Or that in Eises HaKabbalah v'Chassidus as a Zog Dernof. And he says then also in the expression, the Kabbalah and Chassidus, Tikna Leimer b'Shachas Beis Pa'omim. But why do they say in Shachas to say it twice? Is Al Derech L'Yankev Hashapodes Avrom. There's a pasuk that says Yankev Podes Avrom. Yankev redeemed Avrom. So Chassidus means, what do you mean Yankev redeemed Avrom? So Poshet Pshat, there's Pshat in the pasuk, but Chassidus asks, what does it mean Yankev redeemed Avrom? So it says Yankev is Midas HaTiferes. Avrom is Chesed, Yitzchak is Gvura, Yankev is Tiferes. And Tiferes Mata Klapa Chesed. Tiferes is more like, Tiferes is basically a mixture of Chesed and Gvura. That's what Tiferes is, Rachamim. But it's more Chesed, because Tiferes means you give. Chesed you give, not real, if it's not Chesed, if you give, there's no limit. You give everybody. Everybody is equal, deserving to get. If you do Gvura, some people don't get. Tiferes, Rachamim means you gave also everybody, realizing that he doesn't deserve, and nevertheless you give him. So mainly, the main union of Tiferes is the giving. So Tiferes and Chesed have a lot in common. And since Shachas has to do with Chesed, so in Shachas we say twice. We put the Tiferes in there. That's Apikabola, Apiksidis, why we say it 3 times. But the Rebbe asks, does Gufat Avram beer? This needs explanation. Since according to Tzemach Tzedek, if you hold Tfilas Arvis Rishus, you only need 2 times to become a Ben Elam Haba. Because might if you don't have to say it, because as he said, whatever Tilal David accomplishes, it accomplishes by mighty without saying it. So you don't have to say it. But if was felt noch einmal Soldat und sagen Madrid, so why do we need it a 3rd time? The reason we don't say it, according to this, we don't need to say it. Why don't we need to say it? Because by saying it twice during the day, at night it happens by itself. You don't need to say it. And this goes according to the Mandam, Tfilas Arvis Rishus. So if it happens by itself and we don't need to say, so why Taka say it? So what's the answer? He says, they were masakan to say it, not to skip it. You're not skipping it. The answer is because we shouldn't skip once. We should have 3 times. Whichever pshat, like I said, there's a lot of Kabbalistic things here. But the pshat is that we need to say 3 times for some other reason. But we have the 3rd time. So he himself, that why don't you have to say it, if Tfilas Arvis Rishus? Just like you don't have to daven. Why don't you have to daven? Because whatever you daven, Meshachas and Mincha will accomplish by itself what might have to accomplish. Same thing, Tilul David. So you do have the 3rd time. So you're not skipping it. You're not skipping it because it's accomplished. Why do we have to say it? So that's a kasha on Tzemach Tzedek. First, he has the kasha that how does the Rebbe's father's beer fit to the beer of the Tzemach Tzedek? And now the kasha on Tzemach Tzedek's beer itself. He says that according to the halacha, Tfilas Arvis Rishus, Yitakin don't have to say a 3rd time. So why do we say it 3rd time? The Shleimer in the Kudas Abir Bezeh. The Rebbe says the Kud of the beer is as a achilles between Shas and Zayar. Tzemach Tzedek explains it according to Shas, the way the Maimer Chazal is in Shas and Gemara, and the Rebbe's father explains it on the Zayar. That's the difference. The Tzemach Tzedek read via Zog dort wegen das Hashas. Explaining Gemara. The Gemara says that if you say 3 times Tilul David, you will be a Ben Elam Hapo. And he says that goes according to the Mandam at Tfilas Arvis is a chayv. So you have to say 3 times to be a Ben Elam Haba. And the Tzemach Tzedek as, but if you hold according to the halacha that Tfilas Arvis is not a chayv, you don't have to say 3 times. Okay. So he's talking about the way it's al pinigla, the way it's according to the Gemara. Now pinigla the Torah, according to Nigla, is the man do omer Tfilas Arvis shoes. If you hold might is only a shoes, hot nit kenort amilos Hillel David Tfilas Arvis. There is no need, there is no inyan in saying Tfilas David Mamayrid. And as he said, you don't even have to say it 3 times. In Shachris, you don't have to say it another time to wake up the 3rd time. Because Alpin Nigla, if you hold Tfilas Arvis Rishus, there's no need for it. And that's what Tzemach Tzedek says. And he's saying it pshat in the Gemara, in the way Nigla is. My father, the Rebbe says, is explaining it the way pshat in Zayar, which Zayar is the way the Indian is Alpi Pnimius Atere, Alpi Kabbalah. So there, the Rebbe says he's not going to explain it, he'll explain it soon. So there, according to Pnimius Atere, is number 1, Afilu Laman Dom et Tfilas Arvis Rishus, Hot Anort Amiras Tilul David. Api Pnimius Atere, even if you hold Tfilas Arvis Rishus, that's what the Rebbe's father says, that the 3rd time that the Zayar says you have to say is like Tfilas Arvis Rishus. and you have to say it 3 times. So even Tfilas Arvis Rishus, you have to have, there's an Inyan in saying Tilul David the 3rd time. Nor, Yamir is begin Shvoche, which is Kemei Valderech Rishus. But the Zayah says that 3rd time is not for the same reason. The other 2 is for Parnosa, you have to ask the Eibishter for your needs. And the 3rd time is for praise. But there is an Inyan in saying the 3rd time, even if the old Tfilas Arvis Rishus, according to Pnimis HaTeirah. Doesn't say why yet. But that's different than Al Penigla. Al Penigla, if you hold Tfilas Arvis Rishus, there's no Inyan in saying a 3rd time. So you don't have to say it the 3rd time. Al Pnimis HaTeirah, even if there is Tfilas Arvis Rishus, and the 3rd time of Tilul David is connected Tfilas Ma'ariv, nevertheless there's an Inyan in saying. And the second thing, Di Amira from Tilul David, this time of Tilul David, Afa Piaz is connected Tfilas Arvis, even though it's because of Ma'ariv, is it Amira Bepel and Tfilas Shachris. Al Pikabola, you say it in Shachris. Because that was the whole kasha. What was it got to do with Shachris? A Pikabola, the 3rd time, even if you hold Tfilas Arvis Rishus, there is an Inyan in saying it, and you could say it by Shachris. We don't know yet. Why? When the father is Eichlet Tzemach Tzedek Messiah, so since it's Tzemach Tzedek is talking Al Pi Nigle, not the way it's Al Pi Kabola, he finishes off, and he says, Mikol Mekel Leila Davak Amira Ashrei Gimel Pomim, Eim Leisi B'Shachris. He finishes off. Nevertheless, he says, you should not skip that Ashrei, which is the Tilul David the 2nd time, which is the 3rd, besides this, the one in Sukkot Zimmer and the one by Mincha. There is the Noch Masber, the Shayches, from Arvis to Shachris, Al Derech HaKabola. Yitzchak explains that we say the one that is that Shayches to Ma'ariv, you say by Shachris, because there's a connection between Ma'ariv and Shachris, Api Kabola. Because Tiferes, Mata Klapa Chesed, as we said before, Tiferes, which is Ma'ariv, which is connected Yankiv, is connected to Chesed. So we see like this. He's Masbi first being in the way it's Al Penigla. Then he even hints that Al Pikabola things are different. So there was Leib Shatan that Tzemach Tzedek that it's 2 in Yonim. The way he says that if you hold Tfilas Arvis Rishus, there's no need for a 3rd time, that's Al Penigla. The Kabbalistic Inyan Al Penigla. But it's Al Penigla. And then Al Pikabola, it's not like that. It's Al Hazeir, which is Kabbalah, it's not like that. So the Kabbalah, you have 2 things, as he says here. Even though Tfilas Arvis Rishus, even according to Mandom Tfilas Arvis Rishus, there's a Inyan saying Tilul David. And for some reason, you could say it by Shachris. What's it got to do with Shachris? It's a 3rd time that you don't need to say because might if you don't have to daven, you don't have to say it either. Though, here the Tzemach Tzedek is saying Tzemach Tzedek, he mentions the Kabbalah part also. Here he's not talking about the main takana, which is 2 times. Nor does his Al Pi Pnimis Yonim. He adds in the end of it what he says, the way it's according to Pnimis Yonim, that even if you hold Ma'ariv as a Rishus, you say it 3 times. Because the end he hints to Kabbalah. And the Rebbe's father, Lechatchila, is talking the whole thing about Kabbalah. So Tzemach Tzedek is mentioning 2 in Al Pi Nigle. Al Pi Nigle, you only say 2 times if you hold Tfilas Arvis Rishus. Al Pi Kabbalah, you could say it a 3rd time, and you could say it in Shachris. And that's what the Rebbe's father means, and the Tzemach Tzedek hints to it. What's the beer in this? Why is it that Al Pi Kabbalah, even though Tfilas Arvis Rishus, there is a Inyan saying a 3rd time Tilul David. And Shachris, you say it in Shachris. So first, let's explain what the Tzemach Tzedek says. As Anan the Kaimalot, Tfilas Arvis Rishus, we who ask him that Ma'ariv is not a Chayva Rishus, Lochen Ein Emrim Ashrei Ketin Tfilas Arvis. He says that's the reason we don't say Ashrei, which is Tilul David before Ma'ariv. While the pool of Namira is Tilul David, Vata Yum Shechmeil, because whatever the saying of Tilul David will accomplish will happen by itself. That's what he says. That's why we don't have to say Ashrei Tilul David by Ma'ariv. But from them is moving from that we understand that those was Mizokne Tilul David ba'arvis, like the man dom at Tfilas Arvis Rishus, that the reason we don't say by Ma'ariv Tilul David, according to the opinion that says Tfilas Ma'ariv is not a Chayv, is only a Rishus, in nit weil azata kon is like telis. Interesting thing, it doesn't say there's no purpose. If you hold Ma'ariv as a Rishus, means there's no Chiyuv, so there's no Chiyuv until Tilul David. So you could have said no Chiyuv, so what's the purpose of saying? I mean, you could say whatever you want, you could say all kinds of Tilul, but this Nakuda, or specifically Tilul David, has no point, there's no telis. But when it's Cypher film zu sagen dem dritten Mal Tilul David, because even if you'll say it, you won't accomplish anything. You'll still be missing that 3rd time. Because if it's like Tfilas Arvis Rishus, so there's no need for it. If there's no need for it, there's no purpose. So you won't accomplish anything. Just like Ma'ariv is a Rishus and take Taka sometimes didn't. If there was a need, you wouldn't have Ma'ariv. Same thing here. This is something that's extra and there's no need for it. That's how you might think some ascetic means. That you don't say it because if you hold Tfilas Arvis Rishus, you won't accomplish anything. But if you look at the words, that's not what he says. He doesn't say you won't accomplish. He says you do accomplish, but it's accomplished anyway. He says because not the pshat you won't accomplish anything, not because there's no need. It doesn't do anything. There's no need. There is a need for it, but that need is accomplished without saying. It's a different pshat. That means it's nimshach by itself, whatever it is. It's not verstandig. It's not understood. Just like by Ma'ariv, we say you don't have to daven Ma'ariv really originally. But the yichud from Tfilas Arbis because that Ma'ariv is supposed to accomplish every tefillah you accomplish a yichud l'mayla, and the yichud that Arbis is supposed to accomplish happens by itself. Why? How does it happen by itself? If you daven shachas, you daven mincha. Now you are ready for the third type of yichud, and that happens by itself. That's why you don't have, according to the Mandama, you don't have to daven Ma'ariv to the shoes because it happened by itself. Nevertheless, the Chachamim said that you should have Ma'ariv. You don't have to, but you should. There's an inyan in davening Ma'ariv. Same thing David. He says that had he said that you won't accomplish anything, so we understand what's the purpose of saying it. We just finished saying before that Tzemach Tzedek did not say that. There is an accomplishment that you need with the Hillel David. Only thing is, it happens by itself. You don't need to say it. You don't need to say it because it happens by itself. Well, the same thing is by Ma'ariv itself. After Chassidus Ma'ariv, you don't have to daven because the yichud happens by itself. Nevertheless, the Chachamim said it, so you need to say it. You need to daven. So the same thing should be here. That's what Gedarv Zayla Kaponim an inyan for the shoes. Should said you don't have to say Hillel David the third time, but there's an inyan to say Hillel David the third time. Where the Tzemach Tzedek seems to be saying that there's no that you don't say Ma'ariv. You only say twice. You don't have to say it. Especially now that it was established, it became a cheva. So at least after the Chachamim made it to a chev, the Yidden accepted the plan, made it to a chev, so Tilo David should also be the same. If it's mamish parallel to Ma'ariv, that's what it's kasha on the Tzemach Tzedek. What's the pshat? The Tzemach Tzedek says that there is an inyan in Tilo David. It doesn't say there is no inyan in Tilo David at night. Then you can't say what, but it's a good thing to say. Why is it a good thing to say? I say anything. It's a good thing to say any other capital Tilim. There's no inyan. That's not what he says. He says there is an inyan, but we don't need it. Just like by Ma'ariv. But by Ma'ariv we don't need it. Nevertheless, Chachamim said it's a good idea to say. And later they were made it in Tacheva. Why didn't they do the same thing by Hillel David? Why isn't that? There's no shaykh. Why? No inyan, like so to speak. According to the Tzemach Tzedek explains to say it. If the whole reason is because there is an inyan, but the inyan happens by itself. So what wouldn't it be a good idea to say it? So the Rebbe says like this. Concerning all this in Yonim where we find that they are higher than Aveda Soda. In other words, like this. Using the Lashon of Chassidus, some things are Isarusa de Latata, Isarusa de Layla. Means we do something, and what we do is mamshir that madrege. What we do brings down that giluye, that light of that madrege. That means that madrege is a level where we could reach. By doing certain things, we reach into that level and we bring it down. Then there are certain things we could say no. We can't reach that level, it's too high. But nevertheless, it accomplishes something. So it says this is something that comes no maila by itself. The Eibishter himself gives you these madregas, and it's not dependent on your Aveda. So the Rebbe says here, concerning these things which are higher than Aveda, and happen by themselves automatically, but it has to be but when does it come by itself? Not just out of the blue. It comes by itself if you made hachonas. See, you have to do something, but certain things you have to do because what you do brings it down. Certain things you can bring down, but you have to do. If you did it, you made a kela, and now the Eibishter will give it. So you have to make hachonas preparations. Great su akela mukshe, and you prepare a proper vessel. If that accepts amshachas mamayla, so that's the those inyonim that come by themselves. In that gufa, there are two categories in that itself. So there's another category that you are mamshechet, but we're talking in that inyan that you are not mamshech. You just whatever you're supposed to do, that thing should that madrega should come down, is not because you reach there and you bring it down. You make a kela that the Eibishter should give it down. But there gufa, there are two sugim. Number one, madrega is in the ganzen hecha von Aveda Sodom. There are certain madregas which are completely higher than the Aveda of a person. Something that you can't do anything about it. Al derech v'bekriyas yamsuf. When the Eibishter split the sea, but the Eibishter had gesagt, vatem tachrishu, the Eibishter used to be quiet. Es darf nicht sein, kein Tefillah, you shouldn't even daven. Weil die Melchome Mamaylis von Azah Ort und Madrege, wo es ist nicht scheich von Aveda Sodom. The Melchome that the Eibishter had with the Mitzrayim by Kriyas Yamsuf is something that you cannot reach. It's something that the Eibishter himself does. In other words, there had to be things before that. Obviously, we said before that you have to be achone, but the thing itself, don't do anything about it. It says sometimes if you do, you spoil it. You're mavalvo. And he brings in order 25 that Torah brings that sometimes if you're going to do your Aveda, you're going to limit the Hamshocha. You're going to limit Hamshocha according to your Aveda. Better don't do anything. In other words, you do yourself the achone, do whatever you're supposed to do before, finish, and now don't do anything. And then there's a second level, second category. This is something that you'll do will help. But the Aveda is not an inyan for chayven or blazer shoes. Shayches, but you don't have to do it. It's not. It's a reshus. The asiyas odem is not ufton amshocha mamayla. True. What the person does is not to bring down that amshocha. As we said, we're talking about inyonim which are beyond that we're able to be mamshich. So what you do is not going to be mamshich. Because if you're able to accomplish it, you do it. You're mamshich. It would have been an obligation that you should do it to be mamshich. So what is the inyan? Sometimes the amshocha comes as matone, but there's an inyan to do something. So pales ein pulos lamatik the boy b'shleimus. But when it does come down, it should be come down here and accomplish completely what it's supposed to. So the reason it's coming down is because the Eibishter gives it mamayla. But it's a good idea to do something that will help it, which means it will help it. The kela, when you're makabel, it will help it. So therefore, there is an Aveda that will be connected to that Amshocha. Vididugme, but Tzemach Tzedek brings an example for the Askoras Tal. We mentioned Tal in Shemnesre. We asked David to give us Tal. Tal is due. So, as Leichai v'chachom v'asket. See, in our Nusach, we say Shemnesre made it atol. In other Nuschos, we don't say it. Masha v'ruach made it ageshem, we have to say wintertime. Summer, we don't say anything. They don't say anything. We say Tal. But why is the din that Batsim you don't have to say anything? Because Tal, while Tal is Hechef on Yisarus Tata, Tal Lemetza. The Gemara says Tal, you don't have to ask for. Tal comes by itself, never stops. Rain could sometimes stop, and you got to ask David. And your tefillah will be mamsh of the rain. Tal is something that always is there. So therefore, by Tal, the Chachamim did not say you should be masked. But in Bola Hasker masked. It says if you want to be masked, you should do it. You should mention it. Why? It should be for a brocha. In other words, you're mentioning the tal, it's going to leave anyway, but it should be in the proper way. It should come down. We should accept it and receive it in the right way. It's kedai to say. So this is an example that something that is not that you are mamshechet, your Aveda is not mamshechet. The Eibishter gives it. Nevertheless, there's an inyan that you should mention it and do something so it should come on properly. So again, here we have one madregi is when something that you shouldn't, there's nothing that you can do, it has nothing to do. You make a chonis, true. And then when the Eibishter gives it, after you make your achonas, he gives it, don't do anything. Because it's beyond, you don't reach it and you have nothing to do. Sometimes, even though the Eibishter gives it on his own, but derech matone, nevertheless, you could have an effect that when you do something, it will make it come better. It'll be more brocha. And that is not a chayva. Because if it would be something that your Aveda brings, you must do that to bring down the Aveda. This is something that it's not a chayva. When the father is in Aefen from the shoes, that's why this level is called the shoes. From the bal that das rechts wegen Azach, was is Hecher von Aveda Sodoms. See, the shoes is like in between. On one hand, the shoes means that you don't need it. You don't have to do it. On the other hand, the shoes, it's a good idea to do it. So it's both true. On one hand, it's no chayv. Why? Because it's something which is hecher from Avodah Sodom. We're talking about something that's beyond the Avodah of a person. He says, "Aninya from the shoes." It's not a chayv. It's something that you could do if you want. We can't force you. We can't force you to do something to bring it down. Why? Because it's not up to you. So it's not an obligation on the person. On the other hand, if you do it, what there says the Indian from Tfilas Arvetz Rishus, same thing in Ma'ariv is a Rishus, according to that opinion. We said the Yichud that's supposed to happen to Ma'ariv doesn't happen because of your Aveda. Whatever is supposed to happen by the Indian of Ma'ariv happens by itself. There is a place for it. The Yichud should be for a bracha. It should come down properly. So here we understand what is the taich in the Indian in Tfilas Arvis Rishus. That Tfilas Arvis is a very high madrege, and it comes down by itself, that Yichud, and we can't be mamshech, there's no chayva. But nevertheless, it's the second level that if we do something, it'll make it more bracha, it'll bring it more down. Now we'll understand based on this why this idea is only by Ma'ariv and not by Hillel David. Because the kasha was, why won't he say the same thing by Hillel David? By Hillel David, you should also say it to the Shus. According to the Tzemach Tzedek, he says that Hillel David, we don't say it all. If you hold Tfilas Harav, it's a Shus, you don't say it. Why is it different than the Ma'ariv itself? Ma'ariv itself, we do say. It's not a chayva, but it's an inyan to say, and now it's even a chayva. Why don't we hear the same thing by Hillel David, where the Tzemach Tzedek says, according to the halacha, that Tfilas Harav is a Shus, there's no inyan in saying it the third time. And the reason will be, he says, what does he say? Because it'll happen by itself. Might will also happen by itself. Never there's an inyan to say it. You don't have to, it's an inyan. Why not here? Now we'll understand. The inyan from Amira Hillel David, what does the accomplishment of Hillel David? It's a Tzedek Mavai, it's a Tzedek explains that this is Ma'erer, the Madrege, from Vanan, is Maschil, Sheirish, he said it is Yichudzum. Like I said before, it's Kabbalah Dikinyonim. When we talk about Yichudim, Yichud means Zol Malchus, which is the 6 feet as a Malchus, Yichudim L'maylan, that makes some Shachas L'mata, all kinds of Inyonim. But in Hillel David, the Tzemach Tzedek says that it reaches into the Sheirish of Yichud. There is the Yichud that happens in Atzilus, and then there is the source from where this Yichud comes. Hillel David reaches that higher level. Hillel David is not connected only to the Yichud that comes down, which is a Yichud that comes by itself. But this is even higher than that. This is the Sheirish of the Yichud. So since this is the Sheirish of the Yichud, V'meil is verstandig, the Amir hat nit genor b'tfilas arvis. That's why it has no place by Ma'ariv. We said before, davening Ma'ariv has a place, even though you don't have to, because the Amshocha comes by itself. Because you do connect to that Madrege. You don't mamshech, the Eibusha gives it, but since to some degree you connect, so it's a good idea to bring it down better, lebroch, etc. But this is not connected to that what comes down the Ma'ariv. This is connected to the Sheirish. Those was mispalal arvis beit mishel reshus upon him. When we daven Ma'ariv, we said outside reshus. It's a good thing to daven Ma'ariv, even though the Hamshocha comes by itself. It's negeya blazing an eif from pulas hayichud. It's negeya that yichud that's going to come down by itself. What effect will it have? How will it come down here? But nit kedai zuft on the yichud, not to make the yichud. Ma'ariv takes the yichud that is given milmaila and makes it in a certain way. So it's kedai to daven. You don't have to because the yichud is happening anyway, but it's a rishus. This reaches into the level where the beginning of the sheirish of the siseidus of the yichud. Das heißt, es darf uft on dem yichud. It has to make the yichud. In them is nishaychas aveda sodom. Here aveda doesn't. In other words, davening Ma'ariv is the second level. It's talking about something that comes by itself, but nevertheless, it's a level that your aveda will have some effect. Hillel David is not that, is the first level, the first category. It comes down by Hillel David brings down such a madrege by Ma'ariv that's beyond anything that you can do about it, because it goes to the sheirish. It's not an eifun how the yichud will come. It's going to make the yichud. Our aveda doesn't make the yichud. The second level, we said, we don't make that yichud that comes from us. We make that the yichud should come in a certain way. So when we're talking about something that is going to make the eif in the way the yichud should be, we don't have to, but it's a good idea. But if we're talking about the higher level which makes the yichud, then avodas adam has nothing to do. So there's no purpose in saying tilul david. The answer is the kasha. Das is aber mitzad nigla the Torah. Like I said in the beginning, the Rebbe explains nigla. The nigla of the Tzemach Tzedek, he says alpi nigla. The way the beer is alpi kabbalah. Alpi kabbalah. All these inyonim we say the yichud l'mayla comes down is all kabbalah. But this is the beer, the way it's alpi nigla. But the line in Galia the kuchabricha chitzeni is kiviyochol hakeser. Chitzeni is like it comes from a higher madrega than Atzilus. It comes from keser, but in keser itself you have pnimis hakeser and chitzeni hakeser. So alpi nigla, the whole union of nigla that it has to do goes all the way up to keser. But in keser gufa, since it's nigla, it's the superficial, the outer part. It's only to chitzeni hakeser. So b'meila it's Galia the kuchabricha. That's called the revealed part of the Eibishter. The mele is nichayach kinasiyah mitzad ha'odom inuf to the yichud. The mele, a person can't reach that madrege to accomplish the yichud. But yichud nems from pnimis hakeser. The yichud comes from pnimis hakeser. In alpinigla, you only could reach to chetzenis hakeser. And when we're talking about bringing down the yichud, so if we're talking when the yichud is there already and bringing it down in a certain way, that's alpinigla also. But when we're talking about the pnimis, the higher the source of all that, which that's where pnimis atera is. So there, since it's kabbalah, it's pnimis hakeser, that's a level where we can't reach it all. So alpinigla, which reached the lower madrege, so even tilul david only is mamshich a certain level that aveda does have plays a role. Because alpinigla it doesn't go that high. But alpinimis it goes higher. Hashenkim sa pnimis atera. But the line is sosim the kuchabricha. Is the hidden part of Torah, which is connects to the hidden part of the Eibishter, which is pnimius hakeser. That's pnimius. Is do aninya from aveda eich nuft on the yichud. So you could accomplish the yichud also. Alpinigla, you can't reach higher than when the yichud starts, and therefore, so alpinigla, if that's as far as you're going to go. So if it goes all the way, you could only go that far. So over there, your avodas adam can't reach because it's such a high madrege. Your avodas adam can't reach because what avodas adam could reach is only after the yichud is there, and it's only your aveda. The way the Rebbe said before that the amira won't help. Why won't we help? Because we're talking about the sheiresh of the yichud, not the way it's in pnimis. The sheiresh of the yichud. The sheiresh of the yichud is something beyond our aveda. Now, penigla, it's beyond our aveda. If you're talking about that madrege, what nigla is, it's beyond our aveda. So therefore, there is no purpose in saying davening ma'ariv is good. It's not a chiyuv, it's good. But the tilul david, which is supposed to reach the sheiresh, and it's in the sheiresh where avodas adam doesn't have an effect. But with pnimis atera, which the chapchila is higher, so the avodas adam, it's a pnimis atera, could reach even in that madrege. So there is do an inyan from aveda in eichenuf from dem yichud. Now the aveda in die madrege is nicht in eifen von geven der bederich reshus. So ab chsidis mitzad the gather chsidis you could reach even what a person could do could reach into that madrege, but it's still called reshus because we're talking generally about something that comes by itself. Comes by itself, so it's not a chayva. But on the other hand, can our aveda affect it? Yes, pnimius it could affect it. Since it's a level that you cannot reach through aveda, and it's not shaykhs that your aveda should accomplish anything. Is the aveda niet chayva? That's why it's not chayva, because it's a madrege that comes by itself, and you can't make it happen or not make it happen. But if you would be chayva, would show that the person is mechayev, machriya. If it be chayva means you make it happen. So that you don't. We're talking about something which is a level that you can't reach. You can't make it happen. As is blaze and asiyah, does give them odem ashaycha to the minimum aspect of the term. It's only something that you have a shaychas to the thing that you're accomplishing. Like we said before, the second level that you don't bring it, but you have a shaychas to it. So therefore, it's not a chayva, even up chsidis. We're talking about my philosophical issues, so it's not a chayva. Why is it not a chayva? Because you can bring it down. Tilul David, is something that you could say, but inside Chassidus, inside Nigle, there's no purpose in saying, because since it's the Shadish, you won't accomplish anything because you can't affect the Shadish. You could affect the Shadish. It still stays the shoes, but there's an Indian in saying it. When the father is with Pnimis Atera, that's why by Ma'ariv there is an Indian of saying Tilul David also, an Indian. But the Amira is blazed begin Shvocha. But this saying is like only not for the same reason that's Chayv, Panos, and things like that. It's only to praise the Eibishter. Was his Kameva Derech Hashus uses his father's Lashon, it's like Rishus. It's not a regular Chayv. The Tafkit from the Amira is not to Shafne Machlir Zain Ham Shocher from Zain Zechul. It's not, the saying is not going to make the Ham Shocher for the saying is things like that. It says Ahilo Vishvach, but the Eibishter is praising the Eibishter. But we do have a connection to it. So we don't reach into the Madrege, but we have a connection. With Tzad Nigla, we don't have a connection to that Madrege. Because Nigla Lechatchila is connected to Chatzenius. But Pnimis is a Pnimius, so we have a connection to that Madrege. So Chayva, it's not because it's a Madrege that we can't reach to be Mamshech, but a Madrege that we, our Aveda could have an effect. So today, to Matgishan, as the Amir from Tilo Dobi is a place on from the shoes in order to show, to stress that this third time Amir of Tilo Dobi is not a Chayva. It's only Rishus. Nicht wie Amira Tilo David b'Shachas Mincha. Not like the other two times Shachas Mincha, what you have to say. But Nekivei given. So now we're going to come to answer the question based on this: why it's in Shachris? Let's say it's in Indians. Why don't we say B'Ma'ariv? Why by Shachris? Up to Chassidus, we're saying we do have a connection to that Madrege. So our Asiya does mean something, even though Tfilas Arba is Rishus. So we should say it by Ma'ariv, also Rishus. But they put it into Shachris. Why? To show. But Mekiveg and Amiros and Nitin Tfilas Arbes Gufa no Tfilas Shachris. They made it by Shachris, not the Ma'ariv itself. Why not? And those Gufa and that itself in Psuka de Zimre. Where did they put it? In Psuka de Zimre. Was kumt far Tfilas Shmonesa de Shachris, which is before you say Shmonesa. What's the pshat? The Eshleim that we could say Adam Keach of Tzukena Mahalos and the Meibish and Mitilos Tishboches. No Cheder mis Mispalo Tfilas Shmonesa de Shachris. This is that we could praise Hashem. Before we even daven Shmonesa in Shachris, nennt man from the Yichud from Tfilas Arba Shalitus. That comes because of the Ma'ariv before. In other words, what the Rebbe is saying here is that the third time, which we say, the extra time we say in Shachris, is the first time. Not the one we say after Shmonesrei. And that is because it comes right after Ma'ariv. He puts the Sukkah de Zimra, or the Tilul Adobit from Shachris, from Sukkah de Zimra, in the connection to before that, comes after Ma'ariv, because Ma'ariv has that Indian, and we said that Al Pichsidis, you have a say there. There's a reason to say it, but if they would say to say it by Ma'ariv, it wouldn't be so beilet. You want to make it beilet that comes from Ma'ariv, so we make it in Shachris before Shmonesrei, so it has a Shaykhis to before. So in Nehora 35, the Rebbe says it seems strange because it comes out that Tilul David, the first one is not the main one, and the second one is the main one, which is not the Pasha. The Pasha is the first. The Rebbe goes into that in Nehora 35. That explains why it says in Zayar, as Panosa lichozel mishlo as the boss at Slutze Panosa the Mora, that for Panosa you only would ask after you davened, after you said. But the Paz sagt Tilul David noch Shmonesa b'Shachris. That's why we say Tilul David after Shmonesa in Shachris. Und das was bei Tfilas Mincha sagt, es geht Slusa, and the reason we say by Mincha before Shmonesa is this, weil noch Slusa de Mincha is as man von Dina Kashe. Because we don't want to say it after Shmonesa of Mincha, because that says it's dinim, hard dinim, so we don't want to ask for Panosa. It's not a good time to ask for Panosa, so we say before Shmonesa. So what do we say here? So that we say it by Mincha, we say it before because we don't want to say it after, because it will be Mazdinim. But the Rebbe asks, well, the Chure is not moving, not understood. We can't ask for food, for sustenance after Shmonesrei of Mincha, because it's a man of dinim. But we came in this bet and kedem slusa. But how could you ask? But still doesn't answer. How do you do it before Shmonesrei? No kedem etutu panosa the more. Before we accomplish the panosa, the Eibishter gives us, because Shmonesrei accomplishes it. How do we say it before? Based on the concept we said before, you could say, Ados is the farbas much mispalgim and tefillah shachris. Rebbe wants to say that the Ashrei of Mincha is said there because it comes after Shmonesrei of Shachris. Leib tareisha for tefillah shachris. So there's still a trace of Shachris. With that keich, we say Ashrei Tfilas Mincha. So Rebbe wants to say the same thing here. The first Ashrei that we say in Shachris is it because it's after Ma'ariv. So it's because of Ma'ariv. So really, the first one is that's Be'etzem Rishus. But this fits to what he says here that we say before Shemini Esrei of Mincha because it goes behemshach to Shachris. So by Shachris, the first one we say before Shemini Esrei of Shachris is behemshach to Ma'ariv. So it comes like this: that L'Peil Api Kabbalah are saying does mean something, even though we're not mamshechet, but it means something because Api Kabbalah we could even have an effect on the very very high madrege. So because of the madrege, and that's what is nimshach by Ma'ariv by itself. But when we have the keich of Ma'ariv, we're able to. And he asked, why don't we say it also? We taka say it, and we say it in the Shachris bekesher to Ma'ariv. And that meaning is that the Mechsedik Meram is Bekitzer, and this inyan that we just said that it has a shaykhis to Ma'ariv, that the first Asher has a shaykhis to the Ma'ariv before, is Meram is Bekitzer. It's a Mechsedik hints to it. Bekitzer in short, we schreiben when he writes Tiknu Leimer v'Shachris Beis Poamim Al Derech LeYankev Hashapoda Avram Shatiferes Mata Klapa Chesed. It's like Yankev redeemed Avram because Yankev is Tiferes and Tiferes is connected to Chesed. So what's he doing here? He's showing the connection between Shachris and Ma'ariv. Because the meat is a Maramas, the Shachris from Amir is still a little bit Shachris Sutfila Sarvis. That he's saying that Yankev Hashapoda Avram, that means that the inyan of Shachris, which is Chesed, has to do with Ma'ariv, because the way that Rebbe learns that it comes after Ma'ariv. So now we don't understand anything. This is a lot of things that are very vague. You have to know Kabbalah to know this. But the bottom line is that Alpin Nigle, if you hold Tfilas Arvis to the shoes, it's such a madrege that we can't reach, and we have no say. Some madreges that we can't reach, but we have a say. We do it anyway today to be mamshech in a certain way. That's when the Amshocha is there. What we do is the way the Amshocha should come down. But here, Tilal Adabi reaches in higher than the Amshocha. Higher than Amshocha, we can't reach that madrege. That's only if you go up in Igla. Up in Kabbalah, you could reach that madrege too. So we have a say there. But we're not mamshechet. We have a way to cause the eifin of how the Amshocha is. That's why Api Kabbalah, even if you hold Tfilas Arvis shoes, you should say it. But where did they put to say it? They put it after Ma'ariv. After Ma'ariv, because we have the Keich of Ma'ariv, just like the third time that we say is by Mincha, because after the Shemines of Shachris. Okay, I'm going to learn this over and over again to really grasp what it says here. Okay. Gute Nacht.